Hello! So today we're going to start this hot air balloon painted collage. And we're going to review the kinds of lines that we've talked about this school year for our hot air balloon. We're going to paint it with tempera paint, and then we're going to use watercolor for the background and add a basket with oil pastel and paper. So the way that we start this is you're going to start with a square piece of paper, and I'm going to give you a balloon pattern to trace. You want to take the balloon pattern, put it in the middle of the square, and you want to trace around it very carefully with your pencil. Then you're going to remember and use those kinds of lines that we've talked about all school year. We've talked about a straight line, we've talked about curved lines, we've talked about zigzag lines. Now you don't want to draw your zigzags real tiny because it's harder to paint. We've talked about wavy lines. I'm not going to use broken or dotted just to save for simplicity. And we've even talked about castle line, so I'm going to add that here too. And just notice how big my waves are and how big my waves are, how big my zigzag is, how big my teeth are for the castle line. I didn't draw super tiny little zigzags like this because that's much harder to paint than if I draw really big wide zigzags like this. There's a big difference. And the same with the waves. I didn't do wavy lines like this. I did real gentle waves like this because they're easier to paint. And then I'm going to give you a tray of paint. I'm going to give you a water basin and a sponge to dry your paintbrush off. So if you look at my water basin, here where these short little lines are at the bottom of the water basin, those are teeth, and that helps to clean off your paintbrush. So when you swish and rinse out your paintbrush, you'll notice that I always use this side of the water basin and I run it across those teeth to get as much paint out of my paintbrush as possible. So now you're going to paint each one of these sections with whatever colors you want. So I'm going to put a variety of colors on your table, probably at least the rainbow colors, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, like you see here. But maybe I throw in a few extras like magenta or turquoise or something like that. We'll see. So you can use whatever colors you want today. And you can color each section whatever color you want. You can use every color that's in the tray if you have room for them, or you can just limit your colors to just 2 colors and maybe you do a pattern where you just paint red, yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow. I'm just going to use a variety of colors as I go. I'm not going to do a pattern. Now that I'm finished with the red space, the straight line up to the edge of the hot air balloon, I'm going to use those teeth and run my paintbrush across those teeth. I push down, not real hard, and I run them across the teeth, and then I pull my paintbrush across the sponge to dry it off. I'm not jabbing it into the sponge, I'm not twisting it around, I'm pulling it across the sponge so that it'll help keep this nice point to paint with. And I'm going to fill in each of these spaces, so now I'm going to paint from this curved line up to the straight line. And I'm going to do my very best to stay inside the lines. Now, if you push down on your paintbrush flat like this, you get a nice wide line. But if you keep it up on its tiptoes like that, you get a skinny line, a thin line. So you're going to need to get a thin line in some of these cracks and crevices of your drawing. So some areas you can push down and do a wide line, but others you're painting, you're going to have to keep it up on its tiptoes to do a skinnier line so that you can paint neatly. Fill in all the white spaces, don't leave any white showing. And temper, we want nice and thick and vibrant colors, so you always want to dry your paintbrush off. Now I'm ready to rinse, switch colors, dry my paintbrush off. You're going to be real careful when you paint next to wet colors, so like I'm painting wet purple paint next to blue paint, because they're going to want to smear and run together. So you're going to have to be real careful right along that edge where the 2 wet paints meet each other. Okay, so once your hot air balloon is painted in, you're going to put this on the drying rack. To do the background of your hot air balloon, you're going to get a large white piece of paper, and you need to write your name and the day you have art, day A, day B, day C. You need to flip it over, and it should fit neatly on a brown placemat. You're going to need a water basin. This is my water basin from painting previously, so it's messy, but you'll have a nice clean one. And then you're going to use liquid watercolor. And I'm going to give you all 6 colors. I'm going to give you red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. But I want you to limit your color choices. So I want you to either use just warm colors like reds, yellows, and oranges, like you see here in the background, red, yellows, and oranges, or I want you to use just cool colors, blues, greens, and purples, like you see on this paper, blues, greens, and purples. So you're going to choose either red, yellows, and oranges or blues, greens, and purples. And I went ahead and chose red, yellows, and oranges because I want you to know that you need to use the lightest color first. So I'm going to use yellow first. And it's liquid watercolor, which means that you don't need to get your paintbrush wet. You just dip it in the yellow. And then you're just going to paint some big areas with yellow. And I want you to paint side to side instead of up and down. But if you paint up and down, that's okay. But I'd like you to try to paint side to side. I definitely don't want you to just kind of swirl around and paint real scribbly. Then when you're done with the yellow, you rinse your paintbrush off just real quick. You don't need to dry it off, so that's why we don't have a sponge today. And then you're going to pick the next darkest color, which is orange. And so I just kind of pull it across the edge of the water basin just a little bit, just so I'm not dripping water everywhere. And then I just put my wet paintbrush in the orange, and I'm going to paint orange right next to the yellow, and I'm going to let it touch. I might even let it mix together a little bit on my paper. And I need to not paint everything orange that's left over. I'm going to leave some white paper so that I can do my third color, which is red. And your watercolor, your liquid watercolor will be in little plastic bowls, little plastic cups, and I just want you to dip. I know that I'm holding the cup as I'm painting. I don't want you to do that because I don't have enough for everybody to hold a cup. So you'll just have this in the middle of the table and leave it in the middle for the whole table to use, and then you'll just dip and then paint. And so now I have red left over, so all the white that's left over, this third color fills in. Don't leave any white paper showing. Okay, so now I'm finished. So you're going to put both of these papers, the brown and the watercolor paper, you're going to put that on the drying rack. Your hot air balloon paintings are dry. You're going to take one of these big permanent markers with the stripes on the handle, and you're going to try and use this wide part of the marker, the diagonal part of the marker, and you're going to outline very carefully. So hopefully you can still see your pencil lines. And you're going to go over those, which means you might actually be using the marker over the top of the paint. And I want you to do this as neatly as possible. And then I also want you to go over the lines that you drew. Now when I used my marker, I made sure to kind of cover up where I had sloppily painted. I covered up a lot of it. I wasn't able to cover up everything. But this marker is going to help, if you do it neatly, it's going to help to make your painting look that much neater. And then you're going to cut, and when you cut, I want you to cut on the outside of the black line. I don't want you to cut that black line off the hot air balloon. So I'm going to cut right next to the outer edge of the black line so that when I cut, this black line stays on the hot air balloon and doesn't end up on the scrap paper. And then you're going to glue this onto your background, your painted paper. So this one is cool colored painted paper. So it's a little curvy on the corners, but that's okay. You're going to use a frame of glue on the back of your hot air balloon. And a nice thick frame of glue all the way around. And you can glue it straight up and down. You can glue it a little crooked if you want. I like to glue them just a little crooked. And you're going to have to hold this down for a little bit because this is a painted piece of paper and it's going to want to curl up on you and not stay stuck. So that's why we want to do a frame of glue so that it does stay stuck. But you can see it's wanting to pop right off that paper. So you got to really hold it down, and maybe hold it down with both hands and talk to your neighbor for a few minutes or count to 60. And that should give it enough time for the glue to get sticky so that the hot air balloon stays stuck on the painted paper. So it's like two painted papers that are kind of all wonky and curly and wavy, and they don't want to stay stuck together. So you've got to give that glue, you've got to hold it together and give that glue some time to dry. Just some time to get sticky, really. It's not going to dry right away. Then you're going to use a brown square piece of paper for your basket. I want you to draw a curved line on two corners that are next to each other. So I wouldn't do a curved line here and then diagonally do a curved line there. Two curved lines that share the same side. And then you're going to cut those corners off at a curve. And then you're going to glue this basket hanging down below the hot air balloon. So you don't want to glue it too close because you want to leave, imagine that there are people that want to stand in the basket, so you need to leave some space between the bottom of the hot air balloon and the top of your basket. The top of your basket is the top with the pointy corners. And you're going to glue that straight down from the bottom of the hot air balloon. Then finally, the last step to finish off your hot air balloon is to use a black oil pastel. And you want to be careful not to smear this because it will smear. And you want to push hard and make 2 black lines here, going from the hot air balloon to connect to the basket. And then just a few crisscross lines. Maybe 3 or 4 going up and down. 3 or 4 going vertical, so I did 3. And then 3 or 4 going horizontal. So I only did 3 both ways. So you could do 3 or 4 if you put them closer together. And there is your finished line hot air balloon that you painted with tempera paint and watercolor. Good job, kindergarten.